Hello, friends. Welcome back. Today, we are going to talk about the Shadow War and why the next global conflict won't announce itself. We typically think that the next world war will start with a single, catastrophic event, a nuclear explosion, a major invasion, or an ultimatum conveyed over a tense border. We await the thunderclap. But what if the global battle we fear is already happening? What if World War III has already begun, disguised not as a single war, but as a silent, self-reinforcing series of crises, a polycrisis that is slowly but deeply dismantling the world order? For decades, the specter of a definitive, system-shattering war, a clear-cut confrontation akin to those depicted in history books, haunted the imagination of humanity. Nevertheless, today's analysts and international experts suggest that focusing on a single trigger for a world war is a conceptual trap. The 21st century's struggle for global stability is fundamentally different. It is an era where distinct, interconnected regional tensions, driven by grand power rivalries, environmental stress, and technological vulnerability, are converging to create a prolonged period of global disequilibrium. We are not facing one inevitable conflict. We are navigating a matrix of system-changing conflicts that threaten to collectively disrupt civilization far more severely than any isolated crisis could. Because of this interconnectedness, a crisis in one domain immediately impacts another, leading to a devastating chain reaction. Consider the classic geopolitical rivalries now playing out across multiple theaters. An escalation of the conflict in Ukraine, for instance, immediately stretches the military and political resources of the West. If, simultaneously, a crisis emerges over Taiwan, possibly fueled by an adversary emboldened by perceived Western distraction or war fatigue from the European theater, the global system becomes dangerously overstretched. An overtaxed network of alliances, unable to effectively deter or respond to two major conventional threats at once, creates a strategic vacuum. This vulnerability is then exploited in a third theater, perhaps intensifying proxy conflicts in the Middle East, further entangling major powers and diverting precious global attention and resources. The crises do not wait in line. They feed on each other in a continuous cycle of strain. Adding a new, unpredictable layer to this fragility is the threat multiplier of climate change and resource competition. Environmental degradation and water scarcity, especially in regions like the Sahel and Africa, intensify the competition over limited resources. This scarcity fuels long-running civil conflicts, displacement, and mass migration, destabilizing governments and creating perfect power vacuums for external exploitation. When this environmental stress converges with a simultaneous disruption in a major global food exporter, such as war-induced agricultural failure in Ukraine, the result is a global food crisis. This convergence, a resource panic layered on top of military and political distraction, puts intense pressure on already fragile nations, triggering widespread social unrest and creating a fertile ground for even more instability and conflict. Finally, the new face of conflict involves invisible, technological fronts. A complex, multifaceted conflict would most likely be based on coordinated cyber attacks. Imagine a series of attacks targeting the critical infrastructure of financial and energy markets across the Euro area, directly linked to a conflict in Eastern Europe. This systemic economic shock could converge with physical maritime disruptions, attacks on key trade routes in the Middle East, or contested waterways in the South China Sea. The combined effect, a financial collapse layered with simultaneous supply chain disruption, has a catastrophic and cascading impact on global economies. The resulting global economic downturn then destabilizes struggling nations, increases poverty, and intensifies social unrest, closing the loop by creating more political instability that fuels the initial geopolitical tensions. This framework of multiple, interacting challenges is what experts call a polycrisis. It forces us to move beyond treating each conflict as an isolated event and to recognize how slow-moving stressors, like climate change or global inequality, combine with fast-moving triggers, like an invasion or economic shock. These factors interact via domino effects and intersystemic feedbacks, resulting in a detrimental disequilibrium in which the whole is much larger and more complex than the sum of its parts. The critical insight for an international audience is this: we do not need to wait for a clear declaration of war to be living in a time of intense global conflict. The next world war may not look like the last. It will be a blurred, nonlinear, and constant struggle, a polycrisis where every major global challenge is weaponized and every vulnerability is exploited. To look forward is to look at a world not on the brink of disaster, but one already deep within a complex, continuous struggle for a stable future. The challenge is immense, but recognizing the true nature of this conflict as an entangled polycrisis is the first, most vital step toward navigating our way through it. If you like this video, feel free to subscribe and join us on the next one. We encourage you to share your valuable feedback and tips in the comment section below. Thank you for your likes, shares, and comments.